Want exclusive content and a say on emerging cricket's direction? Support us on Patreon. From as little as $2 a month, you'll be helping us grow the game outside its traditional centres. To sign up, log on to Patreon. That's patreon.com/emerging cricket. Coming up on today's show, the web that is USA Cricket, Namibia hosting international play, Sandeep Lamichhane, and news around the world. Welcome again to another Emerging Cricket podcast across the usual listening spots. I'm Daniel Beswick and I'm joined by three other emerging cricketers tonight. I wasn't going to have the welcome, but I think we should have the special welcome.
Ooh. You've confused me there.
That's okay. Let's just go through the usual suspects. We've got Copernicus Cricket on Twitter. Nick Skinner. Nick, how are you?
I'm very well. I'm going to take this opportunity to wish Tim happy birthday because I've been saving it up all day. Haven't texted him yet, so happy birthday, Tim.
Tim Cutler, future Vanuatu CEO. Happy birthday. Welcome again to the Emerging Cricket podcast. How are you, sir?
Well, older. 39, huh? Look, in a year's time, if that's not the best excuse to get everyone to Vanuatu for a birthday party of that magnitude, then, everyone in the Emerging Cricket family is invited.
We might be allowed out of the country by then too.
You make a good point because our guest tonight, I tell you what, Vanuatu would be a nice meeting place for all. And you will join him soon in the 40 Club. We welcome once again Nate Hayes, better known as CricFan USA on Twitter, our emerging cricket correspondent in the USA. Nate, how is it on a chilly North Carolina morning?
I'm pretty good. I'm camping out in the garage so that my kids can wake up freely and do their typical craziness without interrupting us. But yeah, doing pretty good. I'm going to today in about 6 hours to get the first shot of the vaccine. So looking forward to that.
Let's go. We're months away from having the equivalent. What's the rigmarole of all of that? You're lined up in a general practitioner's. Is it just a huge line for 2 hours getting the jab? What's the go? Well,
you gotta find a place to get it first, and then most of the time they're outdoors, you drive up style, or at a sports venue like a stadium or something like that, or a large parking lot. In this case, I'm going to a town in the middle of nowhere about an hour away, and gonna have to get in line. Apparently the signage is a little bit handwritten, but I'll follow the signs when I arrive and get my jab and sit in the car for 15 minutes to make sure I don't die, and then have one of those rare 1 in a billion incidents, and then come home and then go back in 3 weeks and do it all again. So.
Yeah, it's amazing that we've got a vaccine. I remember this time last year, I think it might have been after the World Cup just finished, the Women's World Cup, but we were just getting the sort of the news about the pandemic coming out, and some dubious medical advice was coming out of Nepali franchise cricket teams, and we had to encourage our listeners to take their cues from the medical professionals.
Yeah, it's that would be nice around here too in some cases if people listen to that advice. There's all kinds of I've heard all kinds of we've all heard all arguments for and against, and it's but I think most people are accepting it, and that's a good thing, and hopefully I'll be ready by the 40th birthday party in Vanuatu next year. I'll have my little vaccine passport or whatever that ready to go.
Yeah, short flight from North Carolina to Vanuatu, I'm sure.
Well, it's worth it. It's like it's the first milestone birthday after I guess 21 here, anyways, where you can finally drink alcohol. And there's not another one until you're 84 or 83 when your family remembers that you passed 80 and you might die soon, and they all have a big party for you. So, it's worth it.
I was wondering where that was going. Yeah, I don't know. I think we just refer to ourselves as being further and further over the hill. But no, that will be fun. But good news on you getting the vaccine. And I'm thinking it must be the first time you've been by yourself for quite a while as well in that house of yours, with the kids having been homeschooled and everything. I know you occasionally get to the park to still practice your bowling, which that's commitment, but some time alone for you as well.
Yeah, that's true. It'll be a 2-hour break where I don't have to worry about stepping on some old Band-Aid or something. So little time to myself, listen to some music loudly.
Not going to be listening to some American cricket administrators?
No, thank you. I think I'll mute my phone.
Yes,
I feel like there's a segue there, Nicholas.
there is indeed. Nate's phone has been ringing off the proverbial hook because obviously they don't have hooks anymore. There's a lot going on in the American cricket world administratively involving courts. Now, this is something of a throwback. It reminds me a lot of the old USACA days. Now, is this USAC B? Are we back to the lawsuits at dawn situation again?
Well, it does seem that way. This is it's not fun. Every time something like this pops up, I end up reading old Peter Della Penna articles for about half a day.
There's a lot.
In this case especially. But yeah, I mean, going back to USACA, some of the history there, the old national governing body was suspended 3 times from 2005 until their ban in 2017, and they fought a lot of lawsuits within the board that set them back financially. They directed a lot of their actions, canceled things off on the field and things like that. So this is kind of a whiff of that again to some degree, but I'll give a little timeline about how this came about. So in 2019, I'm going to go back like a year plus. In 2019, USA Cricket delayed their elections and their AGM until February of 2020. So throughout 2020, leagues were providing USA Cricket with the names and contact information of thousands of players and potential members as USA tried to build up their membership. USA Cricket was working on a membership portal and app, which they'll likely admit took a lot longer than they had hoped. In November of 2020, USA Cricket announced a referendum in hopes of extending the voting rights to anybody who was a member by a later to be determined date. The referendum was passed in December, but USA Cricket did not specify that it met the constitutional definition of 67%, or what we understand as the constitutional definition, citing instead that they'd consulted with their lawyers and determined they'd satisfied constitutional requirements to pass the resolution. USA then announced that as a result of that, they would extend voting rights to anybody who joined up by the end of March 15th, 2021, and then they would hold elections at a later date. So they're being sued by 2 members of the board, individual director Vinu Pasike and player director Srini Salver. And they are alleging that the individual defendants, the 5 that they're suing, they're suing independent director and chairman Parag Marathi, individual director Suraj Viswanathan, who's up for re-election, club director Ajith Bhaskar, who's also up for re-election, league director Sushil Nadkarni, who's a former USA captain, independent director Catherine Carlson, and chief executive officer Ian Higgins, over alleged breaches of their fiduciary duties as directors and or officers of USA Cricket, and for the ultra-virus acts taken by the individual defendants on behalf of USA Cricket. So what they're alleging is that the individual defendants voted to pass the referendum by a simple majority instead of the constitutionally defined requirement of 67% supermajority. They're alleging that CEO Ian Higgins had access to monitor the electronic votes and that he reached out to members who had not yet voted in order to influence their decision. Then they allege that individual directors were not constitutionally eligible to vote for the independent director position, suggesting that their terms had officially expired in August, thus depriving yet to be elected board members their right to participate in the selection of the new independent director. And they're also alleging that the individual directors failed to hold the election and the AGM by the constitutionally defined date of November 30, 2020. So that's kind of a summary of what's happening right now.
So there's a lot of pretty technical stuff going on, but basically they're accusing the individuals named of failing to follow the USAC constitution, and they're accusing Higgins of essentially fiddling with the results. Do you think there's any merit to the accusations, and why do you think they would be doing those things if indeed the accused were doing those things?
So that kind of all goes back to the question of the membership numbers. So as of the summer of 2020, there were only 723 members officially with voting rights for USA Cricket. And from that, only 4, maybe 5 clubs as defined. And so that's not a very big base. So USA Cricket will argue that they felt it was most important to expand their electorate, and they had just gotten, I believe they claimed about 15,000 names of potential new members. So the idea is that they didn't want one single large minority deciding the election, and a way to combat that would be to expand the electorate. So the question right now is, who is eligible to vote, and is it that 723 member list from summer of 2020, or you could even argue that it's zero, that nobody is eligible because everybody's membership officially lapsed in July, or you could argue that it's or you could argue that it's 20,000, the number that they actually collected after the referendum, and over 100 clubs. Also, it's really it's such a thick thing. If you argue that there are zero teams and clubs, why did we have a referendum asking them to vote on this? And did USA Cricket do this and then come to the realization legally that they didn't really have to ask people? Is that going to be their argument? I'm not sure. Also, why not wait for the new incoming board to vote for the independent director? That's one question. So the plaintiffs argue that they deprived the potential new members of the board from the opportunity of selecting that individual director, who happens to also be the chairman. So it's there's so many layers to it. It's really easy to get lost in everything. And every time, obviously, one argument comes around, there's another question. As with everything.
So Venu Pasike and Trini Salva are running this lawsuit. Basically, what do they stand to gain if it goes in their favor?
Well, for starters, Srini is the player director. He really doesn't look like he has anything to gain from this. So he's got what looks like an argument based on principle on the surface. And whereas Venu, he won re-election last time with that small electorate, but he has a very large voting base. Peter Della Penna went through the 2019, I guess, electorate and found that Georgia has 232 of those 723 individuals. That's 32.1%. And that is where Pasike, that's kind of his territory. So the question is, what does he stand to gain from it? Well, I mean, clearly he can influence the election a lot if he wants to. Now, on the other hand, yes, we only had 723 individuals, and he had 232 of them. But in a country that boasts a large cricketing population like ours, 232 members from your region, it just sounds like he did a better job than everyone else of getting people in his area to sign up. So yeah, one argument is definitely, why should he suffer from that? Or does 232 members prove that he's stacking the deck? And USA then went on to have a membership drive wanting more people to sign up. So you could argue that he's just ahead of the curve.
Well, yeah, I remember talking to you about it a little while ago and sort of making the comparison to some US states which get senators despite very small populations and obviously their disproportionate influence. I'm just wondering, looking a bit more broadly, where does USAC go from here? Because it's been barely a couple of years and they're already slipping into supposedly, ignoring their constitution and then having lawsuits where they're essentially suing themselves. This is a really bad look for a new board that was constituted essentially to draw a line under the the antics of the previous board, USACA. Yeah,
and I think I'm not sure where they go from here, to be honest. It's just, when I look at it, I feel like it's such a shame that they lost. They had 7,000 members at one point. They lost all but 723 of them. And, it kind of goes back to, once you lose that many, it's like a really big uphill climb. And that was the thing. When it was all free, they got 7,000 people to sign up. When everyone had to pay $10 or whatever, it jumped down to 723. And now they've kind of done a similar thing. They've put the fees on the leagues instead of on the individuals, and it jumped up to 20,000 pretty quickly. Well, hopefully next time they renew, they'll be able to keep that, or a large chunk of that at least. Ideally, you'd like to see your membership grow, so they have to tackle that. Clearly, we have a culture where people don't want to spend $10 to be a member. So I think if you resolve that issue, if you always have a large electorate, these sort of things won't be as common. And that's the big shame, that you can look back at this and say, wow, if they had just had their membership in order by the time the Constitution states, we wouldn't be in this mess at all. So it really is a shame that wasn't the case.
Yeah, and you talked about the money there. I've seen a statement from USAC essentially saying that if this drags on, they're going to have to start cutting programs and development efforts, essentially, which is exactly the problem with the previous board and all their money just going down the sink on these frivolous lawsuits. So what if it isn't swiftly resolved? Do you see the US national team suffering, or do you think the partnership with ACE means that they'll have the funds to keep going forward?
Well, I don't think it's out of question that they'll struggle with holding events. Looking in the history, money, these types of things caused money problems with USACA, which caused them to not schedule events also. So I don't know if ACE can rescue them, or if they're on the hook to rescue them. That's another thing. I'm not sure, and that's definitely a huge question. But either way, they've built a lot of momentum, it seems, the last year. A lot of optimistic things, especially with the U19 nationals coming up, and so it's just a shame. I'm not sure if ACE is going to kind of bail this situation out, or even if they can, but it certainly throws a wrench in everything.
I'm interested, Nate. You talked about the idea of people not willing to cough up $10 for the sake of a membership. Are people at the grassroots level, your club cricketers around the place, are they disillusioned by what the governing body is in the States, or do they just think that, well, none of those issues really cut through into club cricket? It doesn't really matter to them.
It's kind of, there's an awful lot of cynicism here, and a lot of posturing from people who aspire for more power and more control than they currently have. So that adds to a lot of the noise. But yes, like you said, it's tough to engage the country when, I've mentioned it before, but a lot of these leagues, the youth programs, are subsidizing the adult programs. So that just goes to show how a lot of the culture in cricket in USA is kind of self-centered. The players care about their softball game or their hardball game. The adult players care more about that than anything else. They care more about their game this weekend than they do about the national team and their own youth programs in their neighborhoods. So it's a shame. It sounds like I'm crapping on everybody pretty big, but that's one of USA's big challenges, is to engage that community and to show them that there is value for being a member, when really a lot of guys just want to play cricket. They don't care about the national stuff. They don't care about zonals and things like that, a lot of these adults. So that's one of the, in my opinion, that's why you got to focus a lot on the kids. You got to focus a lot on the U19 age group and the youth players, because they're the ones that you're going to be able to motivate, and you're going to build a culture where the more kids we have who want to play for the national team, the better. So it's an uphill climb, but yeah, there's a lot of cynicism in the community based on our history too. Those who do care about it. So yeah, it's difficult, and I think USA is going to look at that. They're going to point to that large membership numbers that they've just gotten as kind of like self-evident justification for what they did. I don't think there's any doubt that they're going to take that argument. It's
a fascinating place to me in terms of recreational sport, the USA, because if you look to some of the major sports in the country, the drop-off in participation numbers once people get into adulthood is quite marked. Cricket kind of has this opportunity from the outside looking in that there would be a really good chance for cricket to potentially be that recreational sport for people of all ages and all abilities to play and enjoy. To kind of bring it back to what's going on here, how difficult can it be for a national governing body to then go out and to help roll out a bunch of competitions and run cricket from a state, even from a state-to-state basis, not necessarily local cricket as well? I imagine, given the vastness of the country, it is quite difficult, even though there is that opportunity.
Yeah, that's a challenge even on a good day. Just our country's humongous, and there's probably a dozen or so hubs where cricket is very robustly participated in, and then there's the rest of the country where it isn't. So that's definitely a big challenge is to bring the community together. It's always been the challenge here when especially you have everybody fighting for, they want to put their flag in, and it's a rough ride.
This sort of goes back to one of the perennial issues with American cricket, is that there's a lot of people in America who love cricket, but there's not that many people who love American cricket, and balancing that, you have these huge participation numbers, and look, there's hundreds of leagues and all these people playing, but in terms of getting people actually involved in the national team project, it's a lot harder. And so one of the arguments that sort of comes up around these issues is that you should just forget the the big top line numbers, just focus on people who are interested in the national team stuff, ignore all the people with their leagues who don't really care and just want to get together with their mates, and just focus on people who are willing to buy into the national team program. Where do you sort of fall on that side of things?
Well, it's tricky because you have to work with people who are a part of cricket right now. You have to include them in your circle. You're just not going to have anybody, and that's a big challenge. It's the people who are interested in the national team. There's kind of a tradition of a lot of academies here, from people who have been related to USA Cricket in some aspect or another, or some famous coaches or something, and they use that lure of, hey, I can make your kid good so that they make the U19 team, which of course they're going to do. They're going to do that. That's the idea. You want a good U19 team, and the kids, you want them to want to play on that U19 team. But a lot of these independent academies have that lure, and they feel a little bit threatened by ACE. So that's another challenge, is the community you're trying to engage with feels a little bit threatened by your partner, basically, and that's a big challenge as well. So we have to unify. We have to bring those people in under the umbrella, and I think that's part of USA Cricket's strategy. So you can't just cut everyone loose and say, all right, here we're going to draw a line. You're either on our side or you're basically playing illegal cricket or something, because you wouldn't have anybody. If you did that, it would be a bigger scandal than anything else, probably.
It might be actually a good opportunity since you've brought up ACE, American Cricket Enterprises. For those who haven't really been on top of this, who are ACE and what is their relationship in the context of US cricket?
So ACE is basically, the only thing ACE is they're American Cricket Enterprises. They're running the Major League Cricket, which is our first professional cricket league. So that's their role, and also minor league cricket, which is the feeder into the Major League Cricket ideally, and also Major League Youth, which is their solution to an elite youth program, an elite youth national program. So they're a private conglomerate, hopes to capitalize on professional cricket in the country, and they've got the rights to the official professional league.
See, this is probably a little bit self-indulgent, but when I look at USA Cricket and people involved in US cricket, there are so many people who have an abundance of money or resources to try and help the cause. But a lot of the time, and we've seen it with the ideas of building stadiums for cricket, something like Cricket All-Stars, which happened, many moons ago now. It seems as if on the outside, American cricket has such potential in that there's so many people keen for American cricket to just rocket into the stratosphere. But the issue a lot of the time tends to be that they all kind of want to be the hero in all of it, as some sort of, godfather figure in the way that USA Cricket is kind of eventually, finding its way as becoming a global superpower in world cricket. So without giving you too much notice on this question, Nate, is there somehow a solution where you could unite every single one of those people into some, mega structure of USA Cricket that could take the game into new heights?
Well, first of all, 100% agree with you that there's just a lot of self-interest, people who for some reason they want the library named after them or whatever, they want
the Nate Hayes Oval in North Carolina.
Right. But yeah, they it's almost like they don't mind tearing down everything in order to put their flag on the rubble, and it's kind of sad. But yeah, that's definitely a good analysis of the scene here. But yeah, back to your question, what could unite the country? I've thought about this a ton, and it goes back to what I said about, I think you have to start with the kids. You have to start getting them all on board. You have to start. The kids want to, and that's one of the things that minor league cricket, I think, does is it fills a gap between the teenage years and the mid 20s, which players would just disappear. They would either make or not make the U19 team. Then they would go to college, and then it's kind of an awkward phase. And that's difficult for all countries. That's always a gap that needs to be filled. So they've kind of started to fill that gap with minor league, giving people that age a high-end weekend league to play in, which is a great idea. But yeah, I think it goes back to the youth players. And my opinion is, and I'm sure I've got blinders, but my opinion is that USA Cricket somebody's going to have to subsidize the elite, under 21 or under 19 or something. Yeah, probably under 19. Somebody's going to have to subsidize that so that you're not sending kids around to these camps all the time, and their parents are spending $20,000 to travel around the country to attend every zonal or every national youth camp. Along with trying to play in their regular league at home and whatever other competitions arise, which are always expensive also. So, my opinion is if USA says, all right, I know everybody's worried that ACE is a monopoly or something, and they're trying to monopolize high-end elite youth cricket, if they say, okay, well, if we're subsidizing that, then your local academies or whatever other thing that everyone's worried about going away, which is really a big part of it. People are worried that their stake in things is going to diminish. So if you subsidize the national stuff, then their local stuff can stay intact. People will feel a little more safe about their territories, their academies and stuff. That's just one thing I think could bring everyone together. Now that's a tall task. That's like a couple $1,000,000 easy. But that's you get sponsorship, you get more money, and I think that would be a really smart place to put it, because that might quiet a lot of the cynicism.
I think Bez's question about being it all together is probably a necessary kind of almost a construct as we think about the new USA Cricket with a professional structure that is owned and run by a third party, and then you've got national teams run by USA Cricket and domestic leagues that feed ostensibly into a national team structure, but there's also minor leagues and major leagues. We saw a promo video recently with Corey Anderson, Dan Peets, and various other coaches there with what looked like an under-19s squad training. Can you tell us more about that? Because I think it was interesting for a lot of people to see Corey Anderson there. The last time we heard about Corey, he was playing a World Cup final, and now he lives in the US.
Well, yeah, Major League Cricket held their Major League Youth Elite camp in Houston, I guess about 2 weeks ago now, and they had players from all over the country that they invited, and that camp was kind of it was 47 of the best U19 players in the country gathered together in one place to learn from these ace coaches or these Major League Cricket coaches, such as Corey Anderson and Dane Peet. So I got to talk to them and talk to some of the players, and by most accounts, by every account I talked to, it was a huge success. There was a little bit of an unwarranted scandal, potential scandal, not really scandal, but there was a little bit of fuss about maybe, why were the national team coaches at this ACE thing? See, that's proof that it's a monopoly. But it's crazy to think that you would invite 47 of the best U19 players in the country to one place for a whole week and not have national coaches there to check them out, not take advantage of that opportunity. So, if you look back to the summer, it's amazing the amount of things that have taken place in a pandemic at that age level. So you have minor league cricket that happened in an abbreviated exhibition season, and then you have these zonals, you have this Major League Cricket youth event, and then you have nationals coming up next month. And then you have the U19 30-person selection trials, basically. And then you have the qualifiers coming up. So in about a span of a year, they'll have had all of these different opportunities to show themselves off to the national coaches. And I think that's a really positive thing. And that's an age group you can build a lot of excitement with. All the kids I've talked about, being able to talk to guys like Corey Anderson, who's played in some extremely stressful situations. They've picked his brain. And there's always going to be that debate about whether or not you should bring players like from other countries over just actively. But, there's a good case to be made that this is helping the morale for the young players.
Oh, absolutely. As you say, you've got world-class coaches. Why wouldn't you use them? I guess that question's sort of hanging if people aren't quite sure, are they national team coaches or are they major league coaches and the relationship between. I guess we all just hope we hear more and more about that because, we're seeing a multi-million-dollar baseball stadium be converted to cricket and talk of more stadiums being built. There's a lot on the horizon. I guess it's just that somewhat uncertainty at the moment, isn't it, about the demarcation lines and knowing what ends and what starts. There's some great people in USA cricket. I can think of Richard Doan over there that I worked with really closely when he was at the ICC. I wouldn't call him the father of World Cricket League and Intercontinental Cup, but definitely in the latter years, the mid to latter years, he was the one behind that and was a real trusted advisor and partner of the associate. So there's some good people there working hardest. I guess the problem being, the fact that all these people have been flown from around the United States into a camp already kind of, I got to say, it really does sort of, my ear definitely, I perk up when I hear that, considering the situation that you guys are in the country at the moment, that how that was done, how long did they have to quarantine for prior, etc., where that would have been an undertaking in itself. So what are the plans at the moment? We're seeing elite sport in the US being played, but with no crowds. Is there any update from minor league, major league cricket circles as to dates, schedules for when we're going to see both of those tournaments up and running?
Well, they're still targeting minor league for this summer. I'm not sure for how long or the timeline of it, or if they'll work it around some of their national events. Really, the details haven't been fleshed out or at least made known to the public. And then the major league competition's supposed to start the following year, 2022. So there hasn't been really any talk that any of that's not going to happen. And I think, that sort of thing will probably go on no matter what happens with the board situation.
Yeah, it's disappointing to think that these things are getting out of the way of kids being able to play cricket and cricket being able to be seen. I think for me, the conversation around all these people playing cricket that don't care, or at least we don't think they care about their national team, and how do you do that? It's by having a national team that's being seen by as many of the cricket fans, cricket family as possible, and having a credible league system that people are feeling part of. But it's really hard to show the hard work that's being done to go towards that when people aren't playing and there's nothing happening and there's a lot more time. Idle hands, I think, is the term that comes to mind as literary as I'll get there. Nicholas, that would be normally something that you'd be doing on our behalf. I just feel for everyone working so hard behind the scenes for this to happen. But interesting stuff, Nate. I like that they tried to nail you down to say what you think the answer is. Poor old you sitting there, running around after your two kids trying to homeschool them. And by the way, can you give us your suggestions for fixing this? So what does that mean for your playing? What's happening with your local team?
My league's going on kind of as normal this year, which it's nice that cricket's happening, but it's also a little bit crazy. But yeah, so things are kind of going on fairly as normal this year. They've got protocols in place and things like that. I think everyone's kind of gotten used to that because we did have a season last year too. And my own cricketing, I haven't played with a single other person other than an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old for over a year. And I'm going to continue to do so until I feel like it's safe. I'm getting the vaccine today. My wife got her first shot yesterday. But, I'm just going to play it by ear. I'm in no rush. I like to throw the ball against the fence anyways. So,
and work on your carom ball. I've seen some videos there, mate.
Right. You've only seen the good ones.
Hey.
Dear sir, I am carom ball bowler, fielding all-rounder from America. I've already got that in my Vanuatu cricket inbox from this guy from America. Sped up. Really suspiciously sped up, just as he's about to let go of it.
It's been my dream to play for Vanuatu ever since I found out only 3 people in the whole country have gotten COVID. So, yeah, ever since then, it's been my dream.
Please, sir, I am vaccinated.
Yeah, it's a web of issues in the US, and well, we never really know where to begin. But Nate, your expertise on all of it helps immeasurably for us here talking about it, but also in terms of covering it on emerging cricket. So glad that you're with us to shed light on the entire situation. There's a few other things to talk about this week, and Nate, we'll keep you around to discuss them as well. More qualifiers postponed, boys. We're starting to run out of time here. It looks as if Asian qualifiers, African qualifiers affected. across men's and women's cricket. We have seen some other bilateral play set up and announced by various boards, but Tim, just looking at it logistically, we're either going to have the most hectic cricket schedule of all time coming up, or we're just going to have to abbreviate a lot of these qualifiers. In fact, some of them already have been. What's the solution, Tim?
Well, I guess you put Nate on the spot. It'd be only fair for you to do the same to me. Look, we're seeing what happens when everything's being done and time is running out. So always disappointing to see tournaments cancelled. The ones you mentioned were Division 2 Asia. I think Africa under Division 2 is still going to be played immediately before Division 1. Look, there's a lot of hard work going on in the background trying to get this to work, calculating expenses, knowing which countries have which border controls on at the moment and how long you need to quarantine getting in and out. It's the logistical nightmare that would be this at the moment in Dubai, and regional officers trying to get this sorted. Yeah, I do not envy them at all going through that, and time is ticking. We've talked about how much cricket we're potentially going to see back into 21, into 22, leading up to both the men's 50 over World Cup, women's T20 World Cup, 50 over World Cup, the pathway there too as well, under 19 World Cup. It's just crazy. And challenge being making sure the right teams are getting through. And as we've talked about, a lot of these teams, there might be too much cricket for them where they aren't able to get as many of their best players together as possible. But yeah, I'm not sure whether there's another way of approaching it, maybe in the men's T20s or indeed in 50 over cricket that enables teams to actually be playing against each other, that maybe sit outside of divisions to try and build up a block of points. I don't even know at the moment. I don't know what's being looked at, but we've heard options being discussed about Super Series as we get to the end of the year, playing triple round robins or quadruple round robins instead of the double round robins that we're going to see in Cricket World Cup League 2. It's just really difficult. I don't think anybody really has the answer, and I think the last thing that we'd all want to see be used at the moment is rankings. When we know that there just isn't enough cricket played between these nations. And I don't want to harp on about rankings, we do that enough, but there just isn't enough cricket played to really be comparing nations in different regions as well, because they just haven't played against each other or against teams that have played across rankings, especially in those lower places. So sorry, I really couldn't give you an answer, but it's a tough one.
Yeah, I'm just imagining, a spreadsheet with all, countries with vaccine rollout percentages and, whether vaccine passports are happening and quarantine times. And it's making my head explode. Do you see that as a possible solution? Vaccine passports like Nate talked about, or, maybe Israel could host some tournaments because they've apparently pretty much got everyone vaccinated already.
Well, a couple of countries have gone well earlier. I don't know, the social aspect of passports for vaccines are an intriguing one themselves with the various conversations around that.
Yeah, big ethical questions, yeah.
Yeah, but I know that's not what we're here to talk about. We're talking about allowing sports people representing their nations to travel any way that makes it easier. Absolutely. Why not? I also think there's I say opportunity, but you think of the other perhaps quite left of field options, Townsville, Darwin, places like that have hosted tournaments before that might be a little bit easier to contain in terms of hotel booking outs, grounds near each other, and you might be able to get that done a lot easier and less expensive than it might be to be in a Dubai or somewhere like that. So that could be an option as well. And again, this is just me talking and nothing official. It's just, and I'm sure these things are all being looked at because everybody wants to play. People aren't trying to avoid playing here. This isn't the talk of a full member refusing to play against a lower placed or a higher placed associate because they're afraid of losing ranking points. Everybody wants to get out on the field here. So, to your point, if any way it's going to make it easier, and if that's vaccine passports, then great. But I think there are bigger fish to fry at the moment with countries being at different levels.
Yeah, I'm just imagining the clip in Wallace and Gromit where he's got the train tracks and he's like desperately putting the tracks out in front of him as he's going along on the toy train, and that's sort of the ICC with trying to get all these tournaments going.
Yeah, except then they put them in a completely different sized train, and then sorry guys, you have to go in this other train now. Everything's changed again. Yeah. So, yeah. I was about to say Wallace and Gromit. It's like, no, I don't know that. But it's like, actually, no, I think we can all perceive that. We can all see that in our mind's eye, even if those of us who don't know who Wallace and Gromit is.
There is a lot, there's a lot of cricket to be played in not a lot of time now. I mean, if we want to get really selfish about it, Darwin and Townsville would be fantastic to have international associate cricket on again.
I mean, I'm all for that.
I'm sure there are so many regional towns that would love that throughput, but look, I don't want to. That's flying in the face of Australia in this example's squeezing down the numbers of international arrivals. And then if you knew a cricket team,
That's
all
true.
cricket teams were taking the spot on planes of families that are stuck overseas. So there's so much to consider. And as much as we want to see cricket being played, there are bigger things sometimes. You know, the trade-off or the consideration being of how big sport is in a time like this, and the chance for people to be watching their countries play. So don't want to discount how important that is, but I'm just sort of thinking out loud of those options that may not have ever been potentially considered if not for an extreme situation like we're in.
Some cricket that has been announced to go ahead, though, is a bilateral series in Namibia between them and Uganda in early April. So it is coming up quick. It was all thrown together quite quickly. Caught us a little bit by surprise here. But T20 internationals and one-day matches. Good preparation for both countries, both with 2023 World Cup aspirations. So with Uganda going through the Challenge League, of course, Namibia in Cricket World Cup League 2. And also with T20 World Cup qualifying for the next World Cup, Namibia we'll see in India from October. So there's plenty to look forward to for them, but also plenty of preparation that has to be done. It's been a long time since both countries have had international cricket. I think possibly 18 months for both teams, just about. So it is a very long time. And Nick, it's the first opportunity for Lawrence Mahatlane as Ugandan coach. We could see Namibia rotate things a little bit, but it's shaping up as being, well, an interesting series for us as neutrals, but quite vital preparation for both teams.
Yeah, I'm keen to see how we go with this because, Mahatlane has come from, he coached the South African under-19s, so he's got a pretty good resume, and so it'll be interesting to see what he does in the associate sphere. And Uganda have a number of exciting players like Zephaniah Aranitwe, who hits it very big, and of course perennial favourite Frank Nsubuga, who's still going strong. I think he first played before Uganda had a team. He played for East Africa back in the day. And here's this is something that I'm potentially looking forward to, is that there's a proposed union between a number of East African countries, slated, if it happens, to be called the East African Federation. So potentially, if we get the East African Federation, which brings together Burundi, Kenya, Rwanda, South Sudan, Tanzania, and Uganda, if they become a single federated state, the plan is to make it happen in the early 2020s. They could then have their own cricket team. So Frank Nsubuga could go from playing for the East African team to playing for Uganda to then playing for the East African team again. So I think that would be a great career story for him. But to the actual series, instead of geopolitical trivia, I think Namibia, it'll be very interesting to see where they go with some of their spin options, because I'm looking at their lineup for India. You've got Bernard Scholz, Zhivago Groenewald, Mauritius Ngupita, Picky Yafrance, Nicole Lofty-Eaton, even Gerrit Erasmus. So they've got a lot of spin options to get overs on spin-friendly decks, and seeing who gets selected, I think will be an interesting sort of view into where Pierre de Bruin is looking with his bowling options, because they're all very different. You've got Scholz and Groenewald, who are both left arm orthos. You've got Ngupita, Yafrance, who are both offies. Nicole Lofty-Eaton, who's a quick leg spinner, almost in the sort of Rashid Khan mold, and Erasmus, who's a he's a part-time bowler, but he's very canny, and he's better than you think. I think is the trick, and people sort of you look at him and you look like he should be able to hit him for six, but he's just a bit better than that, and he deceives a lot of batsmen. So having that many spin options, I think that's one thing to watch.
So Nick, are you saying that basically they don't need to pick a quick bowler in India?
I mean, we talked about this with Jared Kimber, didn't we? Having only spin bowlers. I think they pretty much could do that. The good thing as well is, Erasmus is one of the best batsmen in associate cricket, at least. And Piggy Yafrance is a handy bat as well. And Lofty-Eaton, we saw in some domestic stuff, can whack it around. So they could potentially have a lot of all-rounders as well, which goes well. But if you wanted to go down that path, you could have Scholz, Groenewald, and Ngupita. So that's three bowlers. Yafrance coming in at 7 maybe, and then I don't know, maybe Jan Freiling bowling some cutters just to rough it up in the first over.
You've thought about this.
Well, and because Freiling's another big hitter, so although you'd want JJ Smith in there.
JJ Smith would have to be there somewhere.
Potentially you could just play him as a batsman, honestly.
Yeah, could. Freiling at 7?
Yeah, no, just get Smith in at 7 or 8 to bowl cutters and rough it up.
Hey, you never know. They might experiment with a bunch of this when the series against Uganda comes up. So
No, exactly. That's what I'm hoping happens, and we can sort of get a bit of an eye of what they're thinking.
actually, it would be good to kind of get Nate's opinion on, say, that Namibian team, for instance, considering they're in the same echelon as the USA. You know, World Cricket League 2 saw them pitted against each other. We saw that insanely good one-day match between them in the round-robin phase. But then when you look at T20 qualifying, we saw America bundled out in the Americas qualifier and Namibia go from strength to strength. So, yeah, I'm just thinking maybe, you know, looking at some of these teams that have qualified for the T20 World Cup this year, Nate, and looking at how far behind the USA ended up in that qualifier, is that concerning at all from a national team point of view?
Well, yeah, it's especially, you know, you've been talking about all these spinners and spin-friendly conditions, and we all know what, I guess, recent history for USA is. So yeah, it's and USA hasn't played for 13 months. They haven't been together. So I think, yeah, it's definitely worrisome, and they're getting ready to play in Canada in the qualifiers, and the Canadians, meanwhile, you know, they all, you know, 80% of that team lives close enough together where they can all just get together and have a practice or something if COVID regulations allow. But yeah, it's anytime, you know, it's just been too long, and it makes you a little bit worried about how they'll cope.
A couple of news bits and pieces to wrap up this week's show. First, Cricket PNG has announced the resignation of national coach and high performance manager Joe Dawes, just months out from the Barramundi's T20 World Cup campaign in India. Dawes was at the helm during the famous T20 World Cup qualification campaign and their reclaiming of one-day international status. Dawes will continue to assist in a transition for the new coach, with his replacement likely to be announced next week. In a groundbreaking move for associate cricket, Nepali leg spinner Sandeep Lamichhane has been signed by Worcestershire for the 2021 Vitality Blast. The 20-year-old is available for the entire tournament and joins Australian quick Ben Dawes as overseas players for the Rapids. And finally, domestic cricket has returned to Kenya with the 6-team African Premier League beginning on Thursday. The tournament at the Ruaraka Sports Club will run over 16 days, featuring a double round-robin phase and a finals weekend with a winner crowned on April 10. To keep up with news from cricket's new world, make sure to follow Emerging Cricket on your favourite social media platforms and make sure to give us a 5-star rating wherever you are listening to the podcast. For now, on behalf of myself, Daniel Beswick, the boys, Tim Cutler, Nick Skinner and Nate Hayes, enjoy the rest of your week wherever you are around the emerging cricket world.